Have you ever gotten any bad fashion advice? Somebody told me that this is a Florida shirt. So I got a Florida shirt. I can't say that flamingos and all that stuff work for me, but you just wonder whenever you get fashion advice as to whether or not it's a real thing or not. Sometimes you can come out a little loud. Fashion advice goes along the same line of a lot of the other advice that you get in your life, doesn't it? I imagine you've probably experienced a lot of people trying to tell you what to do, trying to tell you the way that you should live your life. Or if you had parents that were with you when you had your child, to tell you how to raise your child and everything that you're doing and doing right and wrong. I imagine if you turn on your television, you'll find a lot of advice as to what you should be wearing, what you should be doing, what you should be thinking. A lot of advice, type of drink you should drink or food you should eat. We get a lot of advice in our society, and sometimes it's really not good for us. The question that we face in our life as we go along our path is whether or not we choose to join the crowd. You see, this is an important part of our society, that you look just like everybody else. You do the things that other people do. Come and join what everybody else is doing. We want to fit in. We get this when we're teenagers. There's psychologists over the years that have said there's a stage that you go through where you're going to want to fit in. You want everybody else to accept you. And so we learn real early to do the things that we will get accepted for. We want to be liked, right? And in order to do that, we need to conform. We need to be just like everybody else. Or sometimes people decide to stand out and be different. Now, we know those people too, right? They might be wearing a loud shirt like this or whatever, something that doesn't look like everybody else. I believe that I'm blending in this morning, actually. I've seen a few shirts, so I don't want to make fun of my shirt too much, but I believe that I'm blending in. But some folks are okay, watch this, being different, standing out, and not conforming to society. Well, we're going to look at two stories this morning that pronounce people standing out and not conforming to society. In fact, we're going to go so far as to say we need to be convicted not to conform to what your society is telling you to do. When we turn to the book of Daniel, in the 3rd chapter, we find 3 characters by the name of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yes. So we picked this up in Sunday school. We get these names in there of these 3, as the text says, 3 Jews that were in a time that were under a king that was saying that you need to come and worship this golden idol of me. And so every time you hear this music, everybody needs to bow and worship this idol. So we've got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that know better. Now, all of society is conforming to this. Everybody is doing it. Everybody's doing it. It's okay. You've heard that line before, right? But they looked and they said, we can't do this. It may be what everybody else does, but our God tells us to live our life different than this. We aren't to just conform to what you all are doing. And so what they choose to do is they choose to resist the conformity. Now there's a major consequence to this. The king says, if you don't do this, you're going to be put to death. And they have to make a choice. That's a serious choice. That's not one that you necessarily have to face when you choose what sort of cereal you have in the morning. Choose this type of cereal and you'll be fine. Choose this type of cereal and you'll be put to death. All right, well. But they made the choice to say that we are willing to be put to death as not to conform to your ways. The type of death that was threatened was to be put to death by fire, to be thrown into a fiery furnace. I think it's an interesting detail of this story. You may have heard a sermon, not generally coming from me, where you would say, all right now, repent, turn or burn, baby, turn or burn. Have you heard this term before? You haven't heard that before? Well, in the South, this is the way we preach. Turn or burn, right? Turn away from your sin or burn in hell. Like that's a thing, right? But in this story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego decide that they'd rather burn than turn. I love that. They make the choice not to conform, and so they say, we'll take the burn because we're not turning from our God and our faith. And this steps us into the story of what they're having to face. The king is upset with them. They're turned in. And so they are condemned to be thrown into the fiery furnace. Now, if you are under the assumption that being a Christian or even being a person of faith means that your life's going to go easier, that bad things aren't going to happen to you, you're never going to face a fire of the furnace, then unfortunately, you're a little off from what Scripture tells us. You see, being a Christian doesn't mean that we don't face difficult things in our life. It means that God walks with us, and God's going to carry us through the flames. So, facing the difficulties in your life is part of the life journey that you're going to face no matter what you do. And in fact, the adversity that you face in your life, God promises to take that adversity and make you a stronger person. God promises not that the flames won't come, but that when you face the flames with God, I'm going to pull you out on the other side better than the way you went in. Do you hear that? We don't like flames. We don't like difficulties. But God says, if you want to grow, if you want to get better, then sometimes you have to face adversity. And that's what we get in this story here. And so we get in Daniel chapter 3, verse 15, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then, what God will be able to rescue you from my hand, the king says to them. Do you hear that statement? What God would be able to rescue you from my hand? Now, if you know the full story, this is a joke. Because our God, proven in this story, is that there is no human that our God can't outdo. The king thinks he's the greatest thing. And he says, I'm going to throw you in this fire. I don't care who your God is. It's not going to rescue you. But the story continues. Verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Let's start there. If you're ever being accused of being too righteous, of following rules, you don't need to follow those rules, defend yourself. Why do you believe this way? You don't have to. You see, we don't have to defend ourselves to the world. We only have to defend ourselves to God if we don't follow Him. It says, we don't have to tell you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. This is the key to the story. God will deliver me. Every time you face adversity in your life, every time you face anything that's difficult in your life, if you could possibly face it by saying, God has me. I don't worry. God has me. That's where we should be in the story. But there's a caveat to that. This is a hard one. This one's a tough one to swallow. Following God, asking God to take care of us on the right path, doesn't mean that we just get what we want. What we want in this story is that the flames don't harm us. So you could think that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are saying, I'm going to walk into this fiery furnace and it's not going to bother me at all. That's not what they're saying. Here's the difficulty of the story. What they're saying shows up in this first verse as a challenge for all of us. Verse 18. But even if he does not, we want you to know, Your Majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. What just happened there? They just said, our God knows what's best for us. I don't want to go through the flames. I don't want to have to face the trouble that I face. But I know that God is going to take care of me, whatever the outcome is. Do you follow that? Sometimes it gets tough. What they're saying here is God might not keep us from burning in this fire. But we know that we better still worship God instead of the king. See how difficult of a statement that is? We are to align our will with God's will. And that doesn't mean convincing God to do what we want. That means we want to control who God is. And that's not faith. So it continues then. Biblical faith is not confidence in a particular outcome. I want this, so I have faith that I will get this. This is what a lot of folks' theology is founded on. It's not what our theology should be. Biblical faith is not confidence in a particular outcome. It is confidence in a sovereign God. Whatever I face, it's in God's hands. Not necessarily that I know exactly what needs to happen, but I know who I can rely on to take care of what I need. Do you follow that? You see the difference of that in our faith? God, give me this is different from saying, God, give me what I need. Ooh. That's a powerful, powerful difference. Now the story continues. In verse 25, watch this. He said, look, this is when the king came back and he sees them in the fiery furnace. And he says, look, I see 4 men. How many men are there? How many, right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There are 3. But he looks in and he says, there are 4 men walking around in the fire, unbounded and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the son of the gods. Oh, that's interesting. This is in the Old Testament. This is all the way back in Daniel. Who do you think the 4th one is? Jesus is right there, which is the key to this next piece. God is with us in the fire. Whatever you face in your life, you're not there alone. God is always with you. And so God walks alongside us in our suffering, in our difficult times. Do you think Jesus knows anything about suffering? Do you think he understands what it means to be facing trials? And he says, I've got this. I'm with you every step of the way. That's story 1. Another story in the story of Daniel is one that we're also familiar with, or some are familiar with. And that is Daniel's lion den. Have you heard this story? Now this is in chapter 6. This is 3 chapters later. And Daniel is in the picture now. And in this story, we're going to be facing a lion. Now the way this works is that there's a decree that goes out that says nobody worships anything else other than the king this particular way. Daniel, a person of faith, could conform to what the world tells him to do or do what his God tells him to do. Now, which one do you think he chose? He chooses God. He probably didn't choose to wear a crazy shirt like this because everybody told him that he should. He chooses God, and there's a setup because of his place in society, and so people are trying to set him up, and so they then go report that he's praying to his own God. And unfortunately, the decree means he's going to be killed. This time, instead of a fiery furnace, he's going to be thrown into a den of lions. So, here comes our question for the day. Why did the lion lose at poker? Because he was playing with a cheetah. Look at there. I got to laugh for that one because that one wasn't as horrible as the other one. Christy said that one's actually funny. But this morning I'm doing 2. And she says this one's awful. It's way worse. And she's actually right. So on which days do lions eat the most? Tuesdays. See, she's right. I didn't get applause for that one, did I? You're right, babe, I know. The reason I stuck with this joke, though, is lions eating. And we know that lions are ferocious. We know that lions eat. And so this story is all about Daniel being thrown in a den of ravenous lions. Now, when he goes into this den of lions, we don't get a testament, a story of him complaining or him reaching out and say, God, remove this from me. God, I can't handle this. God, I can't fathom the idea of these lions killing me. Instead, he walks into the lion's den without saying a word. Why do you think that is? It's because he has faith. Yes, there's the word. So when he walks in, he sees these things. It's just a kitten. This thing's not going to bother me. Now, I know people saw my sermon title here, and somebody said, now, I've heard your other jokes. Please don't tell me a kitten's going to be getting killed in this. It's not. It's not. He walks in. He's not afraid of the lion. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are not afraid of the flames. Daniel is not afraid of the lion. Imagine you walking through your life, and whatever comes your way that might look scary, you looked at it and said, it's just a kitten. No big deal. God has this. Now, don't go try to pet a lion. Now, I'm not telling you to do that. But facing life with the confidence that whatever comes your way, God has. That is the key to faith. And that's where we're trying to get. To go into your life every single day without worrying about a thing. To go through your life confident that whatever comes your way, it's no big deal. Now, I could tell you to just have more faith that what you're facing, it's going to not happen. I could say have a stronger faith in the outcome. That's not what I'm going to tell you. I don't think that's faith. Because again, we're focusing on the outcome. Real faith is not focusing on the outcome, but being resolute in being focused on Christ. You see the difference? You see, the outcomes come and go. Things happen in your life. That's not where we're supposed to have our attention in our life. We have our attention only on our God. And we know that God is going to take care of it. This is laid out in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, as it looks back over the stories of all of these people of faith. We've been talking about these people over the past several weeks, people who had faith and knew the promise and that God fulfills that promise. And so in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews circles around and names these people. And then says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Continues, verse 33 and 34. Who through faith conquered kingdoms. This is where he's outlined all of these people of faith and he's named them Noah and Abraham. Administered justice and they've gained what was promised. Who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned into strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. That's faith. These people have come through all of these things because they've kept their sights clear. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us throw that off. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. You see, that is the key to the life of faith. To turn our attention away from our circumstances, away from what we want or hope the outcome is going to be, to our God, to turn our attention to Jesus. Because He shows us how to do it. He shows us how to live a life that's full of difficulties and come out victorious. He showed us the way to live in faith. And then He taught us. He taught us by sacrificing Himself how to have a full life. You see, if you're concerned about death, which is the situation in both the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and the situation with Daniel, if you're so worried about dying, then you're going to spend all your time thinking about all your aches and pains. But if you're like Jesus and Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, death has lost its sting. The only thing that we need to focus on in our life is our God above, because He's going to take care of us.